Welcome in. It's the early Wedge. I'm Rick Gehman, and today we are DFSing the John Deere Classic. Joining me to do just that, Nejad is here. Hello, Sia.
What's up, Rick? I'm excited about the John Deere Classic. Love this field. I think the pricing is interesting. I think there's a lot of game theory angles, maybe some popular guys to fade, but we'll talk all about it. Can't wait.
We will talk all about it. Joining our three ball for today, Mike McClure is here. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Rick, see ya. Great to see you guys ready for this tournament as well. I think it's kind of similar to last week, honestly. A lot of the same guys, a lot of the same metrics we care about. So I think that itself can create some very interesting ownership angles by the time things lock.
Yeah, so we've got similar-ish field to the Rocket Classic. And the other thing to note is the Rocket Classic had the strongest field it's had in its history. John Deere Classic's been around a lot longer. I don't think this is the strongest field that we've had in history, but it's one of the strongest that we've had in the last handful of years. And at this point in the season, Sia, a lot of these guys who are not regularly playing the major championships, maybe not regularly playing the signature events, they're competing against each other all the time. So there is a pretty good crossover of, okay, how does Ben Griffin relate to Chris Kirk? How does Lucas Glover relate to Siwoo Kim? I'm just grabbing random names, but I think you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah, and also like some of the other like non-householdish names that we now know are very good, or at least we're starting to think are pretty good, are in a lot of these events too. And I think that really lends itself to what I was saying on the front end, which is you mentioned some kind of popular names like Ben Griffin's going to be popular. He should be. Denny McCarthy, popular, should be. Siwoo Kim, that's kind of a we'll see in terms of what's been going on with him lately. But there are some up and coming names that I don't think are going to garner a ton of ownership that I think can flat out win this tournament. And I'm not breaking news there. I mean, this is the type of tournament where a long shot could win. You could have a lineup that doesn't feature a 10K guy or maybe not even a high 9K guy, and that could be the optimal lineup. But there's just so many things going on in what is going to be a big-time birdie fest.
The other thing that I like about this, Mike, is, these guys are in literally what we would call mid-season form, right? I mean, there's very few guys who have taken extended time off. A lot of them have played a lot. We know what they have been up to. We're not guessing. So there is a really good kind of, we can put our finger on the pulse, because when we get to Scotland, the Scottish Open, there's going to be a ton of guys from the DP World Tour. There's going to be a lot of guys that we haven't seen play since maybe the US Open. Same thing for the Open. So this is one of our last handful of chances before we get overseas to really get into these guys that are playing on a consistent basis.
Definitely. Yeah. Mid-season form. A lot of these guys are, that we're going to talk about. We've been talking about them all season as well. So I think it's interesting just to see, certain names that you'd never expect to be $9,300, for example. Chris Goddard, $9,300. We'll get there. We'll talk about them there. When we talk about the most expensive golfers, though, the question I need to know for you, Rick, from all of your databases, has Jason Day ever been the most expensive golfer? I think the answer is clearly no.
But he has, but it is like 2018. We're like back when he was number one in the world or adjacent.
Right.
He was. I think there was also a time, I was looking at this earlier, he was also over $10,000 at last year's Texas Open, I believe, which would have been his title defense from 2023, which kind of makes sense. But no, this is that's the only occasion in the last 7 years that he's been remotely this expensive. So very, very keen eye from you there, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's talk about TPC Deere Run. That's where we're going to contest this thing this week. And if you look at past champions, Sia, the names, Davis Thompson, 28 under par. Oof, that's a tournament scoring record. Sepp Straka's gotten the job done here. JT Poston, Lucas Glover, and a lot of other guys that we would certainly not categorize as bombers.
Right. Like a lot of ball strikers. Although, well, I think what's interesting about last year in terms of Davis Thompson winning, but the leaderboard behind him, there were a lot of long hitters on there. Like I think 5 of the top 10 certainly would qualify as bombers. But yeah, typically you're going to get ball strikers here. The fairways are wide, but you don't want to get in the rough because it is kind of penal. So you can get away with some misses here, but you want to be relatively accurate off the tee and be dialed in on approach, which again, not breaking any news there. You want to be dialed on these greens as well. So this is, again, it's one of those things where in a birdie fest like this, where there's not a lot of trouble lurking, you're going to get a lot of guys in the back of the pack pre-flop that are going to have good tournaments. It's just something to keep in mind.
Josh is showing the scorecard right now if you're watching on YouTube, and this scorecard generally, Sia, generates a lot of birdies or better. Similar to last week, you're probably losing ground to the field. Bogey, your whole week is over. It just absolutely totally cooked. I kid, of course, but it's going to feel that way for some guys.
Yeah, it's definitely going to feel that way. For me, it's going to be a lot of what we saw last week. Honestly, just you got to be decent enough off the tee. You got to be able to putt. You got to be able to contend in those birdie fests. I'm still rating, approach really, really heavily, and I'm weighting a lot of just greens and regulation and fairways gained. That's going to be pretty much it for me. Other than that, it's a lot of just current form stuff.
All right. Current form, maybe some fairways, some greens, just give yourself a lot of opportunities. I like that path as well. I want to get to the cheat sheet and start naming names because I can pull up Jason Day's most expensive occurrences. We could talk about Ben Griffin and others right at the top of the board, but we're going to do that, Josh, after a quick word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
And we're back. Let's dive right on into this. This is the cheat sheet at my website, rickrungood.com. The pricing is indeed a little bit wild. Jason Day, $10,500, the most expensive golfer on the slate. Ben Griffin, $10,400. JT Poston, $10,001. The 10 most expensive instances of Jason Day are from 2019 or 2018. So that is basically what we're looking at here, Mike. When you see Jason Day's name at the top of the board for 10,500, your first reaction is what?
I will potentially live bet him if I need to, but I'm not playing him in DFS at that price point. I can't get there on that.
Is that a Jason Day consideration, or is it the fact that Ben Griffin is $100 cheaper, JT Poston, the guys did not, you know what I mean? Like, how much of it is Jason Day and how much is it the rest of the field?
It's a little bit of Jason Day, but it's the combo of Jason Day and the price and relative to the field. I would much rather play Ben Griffin currently at this point. And I don't think I'm going to play both Ben Griffin and Jason Day in lineups. So considering the current form and where he rates for me in terms of talking about Ben Griffin, it's an easy choice for me. And I'm fine to eat the chalk there because I know I'm able to get different enough everywhere else that I can just kind of X out Jason Day's name.
That Ben Griffin guy is at it again. Another top 15 finish last week. That now makes 6 in a row. The stat profile getting greener by the moment. Sia, when you look at the top of the board and see the big three, what are your takeaways?
My takeaways are, you just said that this is the big three, and it's just kind of funny because those big three are Jason Day, Ben Griffin, and JT Poston. By the way, I think it's funny that Mike brought up playing Jason Day and Ben Griffin. Not that he's going to do it, but just he brought up the thought of it. And like literally nobody's going to do that. So I just want you to know that if you do that, it's going to leave you 7,275. You can craft a lineup with that. Again, I'm just, talking about things that people aren't going to do. I'm not going to play Jason Day. And usually what I would say here is, well, let's look at the ownership. People like to spend their money, but they'll probably spend it on Ben Griffin, and therefore Jason Day is going to be really low. I don't think it's going to be low enough for me to consider. And frankly, here's the problem. You're going to fade Jason Day. You're going to play Ben Griffin, and that's what everybody else is going to do. So again, I agree with the sentiment, hey, I'll get different elsewhere. But while I do like Ben Griffin, and while Ben Griffin does check every box, and by the way, no, I'm not going to be on JT Poston. I don't mind skipping this range. And I'm not saying that, I'm not telling everybody to not play Ben Griffin, but if you start in the 9K range, and especially if you start in the 9K range and you don't start with Denny McCarthy, you're already making your lineup a little different than everybody else. And you're likely making your roster construction a little bit different in terms of who your kind of last two guys are in with, usually that's going to be in the low 7K range. Maybe you get up to the mid to high 7K range with the way you construct your lineup. But the first lineup I started, Rick, and again, I know we're not talking about the 9K range, but it's just a testament to the idea of fading the 10K range. It started with Jeff Stenberg's guy, Michael Thorbjornsson. I started a lineup there, and I'm not bashful to do that. There's a lot of guys in the 9K, low 9K, and upper 8K that I think are really good for this tournament.
Michael Thorbjornsen is $9,100. He's the 10th most expensive player on this slate for those who are just listening or want some more context to what Sia is referring to. I'm not ready to get away from this 10K range just yet because I'll use JT Poston, Mike, as a conversation around course history here. So we've got Poston, who's gone win T6, T30 in his last 3 trips. That might not be enough to necessarily move the needle with some of his recent form, but how much are we weighing all of these guys in terms of course history?
Not a ton for me in terms of course history. Like, yes, it's great to see. I think that current form for me is still going to be a little bit more important. And I say that just because it's not a terribly difficult golf course. So I don't know that I would expect the course history to be quite as sticky. It's just not really that difficult of a test. So I would certainly still play Poston over Jason Day. Before we move on from that, I want to make a quick comparison because it's what I love to do. Jason Day at 100 more than Ben Griffin, where I've got them projected in terms of fantasy points, is a 12.5 point difference. So to me, this would be the equivalent of at a major championship, having Colin Morikawa and Scotty Scheffler available at the same price and playing Colin Morikawa over Scotty Scheffler. That's the equivalent of what this is on Jason Day, in my opinion.
Wow. Okay. That makes it pretty clear for me.
Yeah.
The $9,000 range here, Sia, we've alluded to a little bit of it. The top is Denny McCarthy, 9,900. So just a couple $100 behind JT Poston. Then we get Siwoo Kim, our defending champion, Davis Thompson, Jake Knapp. And we round it out with Chris Gotterup, Sung J M, Michael Thorbjornsen, who we've discussed, and then Lucas Glover at a flat $9,000. So there's 8 golfers in the 9K range. This is maybe where we get different and start our lineups here.
Yeah, and you're not going to get too much different with Denny McCarthy, given his, I guess you could say his course fit, but more his course history. I mean, it's kind of amazing. We went over it yesterday in the quick look, and Josh clarified for us. It was T7, T6, T6 over the last 3 years. I mean, the guy's been an absolute monster, and we see how he's getting it done very sustainably across all metrics. So I like the Denny play, but again, you're certainly not getting different with Denny. And let's be real, like you could have put Denny in the 10K range very easily. I'm not saying he's underpriced, but like he belongs probably, in my opinion, ahead of JT Poston, maybe even Jason Day, given his form. It's the bottom of the 9K range though that I'm really fond of. As I look at Michael Thorbjornsen and Lucas Glover, and Chris Gotterup. I like all 3 of those. Jake Knapp, after last week, I'm intrigued by, but if I'm picking some favorites here, Glover's form here has been so good. It's hard for me to ignore that in spite of the bad putting. And Michael Thorbjornsen is just doing it everywhere. I mean, he is really like, I was a little scared last week because of the wrist injury that kept him out for 4 or 5 tournaments. Clearly, that's not a big deal because T4, and he was an absolute monster, great with the putter as well. So 9,100 again, I don't mind starting lineups there.
I think Michael Thorbjornsen is one of the cases against needing a lot of course history. So he's played here twice. And remember, he came out of college. What would that have been? At the end of last year when he got through PGA Tour U. And him and Luke Clanton as amateurs battled this out. Both finished runner-up here last year, T17 in 2023. Mike, this is a golf course that is very much out in front of you. Yes, there might be some good vibes if you show up and you've had success here, but there are no secrets out here.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to about just course history being not something I'm going to weight heavily here. I want you to be in decent form just because, again, it's relatively easy test of golf. So I'm going to be leaning into some of those guys. Like that's, I mentioned Chris Gotterup at 9,300 and like never thought I'd be okay with that price point. I'd rather play Chris Gotterup at 93 than Jason Day at 10-4, which sounds just absolutely crazy. But that's where we are right now. And I really like this spot for him.
Gotterup in the midst of easily the best golf of his career. It was another T26 at the Rocket Classic last week. And quite frankly, he had bookended that event with a couple of sour rounds, played much better in the middle. So Mike, I'll bounce it back to you here. So give you the full breadth of the 9K range. It's Glover and Thorbjornsen at the bottom. Kind of talked a little bit about Chris Gotterup in the middle at 9,300. Anything else stand out to you in this range that'll tickle your fancy?
Honestly, quite a bit. I really like, as Gotterup, as I mentioned, Thorbjornsen, I'm going to be playing a little bit as well. The guy that I'm really torn on is Siwoo Kim. There was a stretch there where he had played some really good golf. Last week was not it. It was far from it. It really wasn't great. And it goes back to the Memorial. He had that bad round at the Memorial, really a couple bad rounds at the Memorial there. Still finished 31st, I believe, in that tournament, but was just awful on approach, which was strange because he had such a great approach run up until that point. I'm probably going to be buying back in on Siwoo Kim a little bit here, just because I think with some of the recent success of Thorpe and some of the others that he's kind of going to be the guy that gets left out from an ownership perspective. So I do like Siwoo Kim a little bit here. And
the problem that I have with Siwoo, who I love, is that like once things start going a little bad, they start going a lot bad. And I don't know if it doesn't have the interest nor the will to try to turn it around, but it is just like, the sink is shipping. The sink is shipping. Was it? The ship is sinking is what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah, all right. I'm just going down with it.
Yeah. I get that argument for sure. And like I said, I'm not comfortable with it. I just think that by the time these contests lock, I will be comfortable with the ownership number that is attached to his name.
Yeah, people aren't going to play Siwoo Kim. I mean, like look at who's around him. Denny McCarthy, people are going to play him for obvious reasons. Davis Thompson is definitely a hot name. It's hard to ignore Jake Knapp, Chris Gotterup. Some people might even play Sung Jae Im just because of his pedigree. Michael Thor Bjornsson, the new, hot new kid on the block, and Lucas Glover with great course history. Siwoo Kim is literally the one guy people will not want to play, especially when you attach a recent WD from him. And the last time he played here was a withdrawal. So like, there's just so many red flags, which again, from a game theory standpoint, makes sense because he does, like, if Siwoo Kim is in normal form and he doesn't have any sort of injury or anything, like, he does grade out pretty well for this course, in my opinion.
Agreed. I mean, listen, the crossover finishes between guys here and Wyndham, I think, is pretty strong off the top of my head. And Siwoo's like that type of player, just like he's going to hit a lot of fairways. He's going to take aim at a lot of flags. The talent is unquestioned for sure. $8,000 range. See, you'll get first crack at this one. We've got Chris Kirk, Kevin Yu, Luke Clanton, and Bud Cauley in the upper half. Right at the middle mark is Ryan Gerard at 8,500. And then the bottom of this range is Pearson Coody, Sam Stevens, Michael Kim, Thorbjorn Olesen. Don't confuse him with Michael Thorbjornsen, and Ricky Fowler. So take a crack here at this 8K range for me, please.
There's two names that I like. And the first name is Bud Cauley, who, for the record, when we did our quick look yesterday, it was the first name that me and Jason Sobel basically did that back and forth thing, Rick, where we kind of like drafted players. And it was super fun. Just check that show out every morning at 10:30 where we do the live chat, but we do the look ahead for the next tournament. But Bud Cauley, just from a ball striking and ability to fill it up with the putter standpoint, made so much sense to me. And we talked about where his number might be and in that 35 to 40 range, which is where it is. I like him. I think he'll get some attention, but given the recent form, I don't think he's going to get a ton of attention. But again, from an upside standpoint, I think Bud Cauley is right up there. Hasn't been super consistent lately. I just think he's a guy that can actually win this tournament. So I'm happy to play him. The other name I'll bring up is Pearson Coody. And shout out to Tom Jacobs, who kind of like put me on to this for this week, because I'm familiar with Coody's game. But what I'm not familiar with was what he's been doing on the Korn Ferry Tour. Like, he's been dominating the Korn Ferry Tour, not winning, but like constant top 10s, top 5s. And then when you look at his last two PGA tournaments, at the Charles Schwab and at the CJ Cup, like, really impressive ball striking. He can absolutely spike with the putter as well. I think he's a super sneaky play.
Yeah, so he's going back and forth between the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour right now. Last two PGA Tour starts that Sia is referencing, T25 to Byron Nelson, T16 to Charles Schwab, big Texas guy, so those make sense. And then just the run that he's been on the Korn Ferry, it's 5 straight top 25s, and they're seemingly getting better. It's 3 straight top 7 finishes. He's beating up. Again, they're in the meat of their schedule too. So like, the best guys on the Korn Ferry Tour are playing their best golf, and Pearson Coody is beating them up quite a bit right now. So, Mike, this 8K range now becomes yours. What would you like to do with it?
I'll mention I like Bud Cauley. I think we have to talk about Ryan Gerard a little bit, because if golf tournaments were played tee to green, he might be winning them. The putter, though, It's been bad. Like it's 5 consecutive tournaments losing multiple strokes. He's lost in 8 of 9. And that's including an 8th place finish at the PGA Championship, 23rd at the Memorial. I just like the way he's played there, which is just, I've seen him have decent putting though. Like I'm referencing that 8 of 9 in the run up before that. We saw some good results with the putter. I still am always going to have interest in someone that is just that good tee to green. Just betting on, especially on a golf course that's not terribly difficult, just betting that we can get kind of not lose strokes to the field, right? Just an average putting day to the field. I'm going to back Gerard again. He's going to be my first play in this range. Other plays in the 8K range that really kind of stand out. I mean, I think I'm obligated to mention Luke Clanton. I've been a heavy Luke Clanton guy, whether it be because there's small sample sizes and I'm aggressive at buying in, or just I like the kid. But Luke Clanton at 8,700. I think if we just talk about raw talent and skill set, he could probably be 9,500 in this field. So I'll play him a little bit.
I think the pendulum has swung a bit too far, Mike, right? Everybody was, all warm and fuzzy when Luke Clanton was playing as an amateur, putting up good results. He has not played as well. He still played quite well, and people have just completely forgotten that he exists. The other thing is this T60 at the Rocket Classic last week was way better than the result indicates, right? He was miserable on Saturday, lost like 7 strokes to the field. He was really good in the other 3 rounds, and I mentioned it when I mentioned Thorbjorn, almost mixed them up myself. Michael Thorbjornsen. It was the runner-up finish here for Luke Clanton last year as well. Sia, we've stayed mostly towards the top of the 8K range. You don't have to buy, but could I offer you Sam Stevens, Michael Kim, Thorbjorn Olesen, Ricky Fowler if I need a little bit more salary cap relief?
I think if I had to pick, first of all, if I needed more salary cap relief, I'd just go down to the upper 7K range most likely. But I think Thorbjorn Olesen was a guy I was looking at. I think I'd be willing to buy in there. I think Sam Stevens has plenty of upside, although I question his, he just doesn't seem like a good course fit from a approach and accuracy off the tee standpoint. I would probably go with Thorbjorn Olesen, but I don't think I'm going to play him.
Could you get 6 guys with the whatever that O with the line in through it is called? Are there any Højgaards in this field? I don't think so.
No Højgaards.
There might only be 2 of them. So maybe not for this week. Okay. Mike, you feel the same way? The bottom of the 8K range, troublesome? Is that true?
Yeah, I'm not super interested there. It would be Olesen would be the top play for me by a pretty wide margin. Trying to scroll as we scroll. I don't have a ton in the 8s. Yeah, it's mostly 7s. Michael Kim is it's borderline. Like I could potentially get there, but I would not love it.
Hey, Rick, can I ask you something real quick on Ryan Gerard? Sure. Are you like, this does seem like, and we talked about this a little bit last week, particularly during the live chat, where it's like these greens aren't very tricky, bad putters in a funk can do well. I think that's even more so the case here on these pure bent grass greens. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this a place where you would subscribe to Team No Putt in spite of the fact that you need to make a lot of putts?
It's weird, right? They kind of go like the places that you need to make a lot of putts are places that are easy to putt on because guys are making them, right? Like no one is going to make every single putt at Oakmont or Augusta National or these places that have really undulating, difficult greens to read. So I think Birdie Fests are partly, I think when we talk about Birdie Fest, most of it is, oh, you can just, access all of these pins. Well, you can access all the pins because there are very few spots with enough slope to give these guys trouble. And yes, they can access the pins and then they can putt it well. So in theory, yes, I think Birdie Fests are better for those guys because they can all make enough birdies. I know it's ugly for Gerard, but this would be a spot to target him in my opinion.
Because real quick, Rick, and I understand Max Grazerman, who's not in this tournament, is a great putter, but we talked about during the live chat how he had lost, I think it was 4 tournaments in a row, kind of significantly with the putter. And you made the point during that live chat, particularly at the end, I remember, because you said, hey, I think Max Grazerman's going to win, that like this would be the place for him to rebound with his putter because there's just not much to it.
Yeah, and he had a couple of chances late
He did.
But yes, I subscribe to the theory. I think it's sound. We're going to continue this conversation with a guy who beat Max Grazerman last week. He's in the next tier here. We'll continue into the 7s. We'll continue into the 6s. But first, we're going to hear from our partners.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R, now streaming on Paramount+.
And we're back. The $7,000 range. Throw them all in here. Aldrich, Potgieter, Alex Smalley lead the way at $7,900. You want Team No Putt, Emiliano Grillo, right in 7,500 with Jacob Bridgman and Taylor Moore. And then the bottom of this range amongst a field of 43 golfers in the 7K range, Patrick Fishburne, Matt Kuchar, Max Homa rounding out this range, and obviously dozens more that I did not name. Let's go with you, Mike. What do you want to pull out of this range?
It's got to be Grillo for me. He's in my top 5 the actual model with win equity. So I am very, very much in here. Yes, it wasn't pretty last week. Lost almost 5 strokes on approach. Willing to forgive. I think that he's going to be dialed in there. Not so much worried about the putter. I think it'll be kind of average. And I think that it's just a spot where he was absolutely locked in tee to green. I'm willing to forget what I saw last week, and I'll be right back on him.
It's played here twice, one good finish, and I think it was a miscut. I just closed it out, but I believe it was a miscut as well. Okay, Sia, let's get a name out of you in the 7s, please.
There's a few that I like. I mean, I thought about Hubbard and Putnam at the top. I tend to not get there on those guys, but I'm considering them, so I figured I'd throw it out there. Grillo, I do like quite a bit. Kevin Roy, I like a lot. 7,400. It's not a misprice, but I think that's a very good price on a guy that has plenty of upside, accuracy, excellent recent approach, decent putting, the weighted ball striking numbers, which Rick I looked at Rick Run Good, recent weighted ball striking, really good for Kevin Roy. So the T8 finish, T18 prior to that, over the last couple of tournaments. I think he has tremendous upside. Hisetsune is a guy I typically like, and on these kind of more like shorter courses, I'm kind of a fan of him, and I think he has upside. A few other names. Last week in the 6K range, I'll mention 2 real quick. In the 6K range, there were only 2 guys that I mentioned sort of right off the bat at 6,900 and 6,600. Last week, 6,900 guy was Tristan Lawrence. He's now 7,300. And the 6,600 guy was Chan Kim. Both had great tournaments last week, and I like Tristan way more than Chan Kim, but I mentioned Chan because nobody's going to play him. Some people will play Tristan Lawrence, and he checks a lot of boxes. So I like him. One last name. Somebody mentioned in the chat Jackson Super. I like him, but I'll take my second favorite Phillips, and that's Chandler Phillips, who is not a household name, but can absolutely get hot with the putter. The mid-iron game is there, and he's accurate off the tee.
I think I know the answer to this, but who's your first favorite Phillips?
That's not a rhetorical question. Wilson, of course.
Wilson Phillips?
Yeah. You don't know Wilson Phillips?
Who's Wilson Phillips?
I have no idea who Wilson Phillips
Okay,
is.
thank you, Mike. I was
Well,
like, what is going on?
Is this a fictional character from a movie, or is this like a real athlete?
You guys need to go to YouTube, and I want you to type in Wilson Phillips.
I'm on YouTube
and
right now.
See what returns, and then turn your volume up, and that'll instantly be your favorite Phillips.
Wilson Phillips is an American pop vocal group formed in Los Angeles in 1989. The group consists of sisters Carney and Wendy Wilson, the daughters of Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is a musical group, Mike.
Very disrespectful.
I was born in 89, so I guess I
missed this.
I missed it.
Let me point out a couple of items here from Sia, which I thought were interesting. So Kevin Roy, I already favored it on the site here, has been playing great golf, hasn't missed a cut by himself since Houston, T18 and T8 in Canada and in Detroit in his last 2 starts. Kind of a similar set of finishes for Tristan Lawrence, but it was T12 at the US Open and T8 at the Rocket Classic, both with some very, very strong statistical profiles. The one that concerns me the most would be Andrew Putnam, who has always hemorrhaged strokes off the tee. And this is a little bit playing with fire for me, but has just an unbelievable short game and kind of figured it out around Detroit Golf Club, even though he wasn't hitting it very well. Mike, there are some bigger names here. I will throw Eric Cole in the mix. I will throw Cam Champ, Tom Kim, Max Homa. Do any of those do anything for you?
They might. How about Lee Hodges? Lee Hodges definitely does something for me at 73. He's been playing some really good golf. You look of late, he's been great tee to green. I would say of late, talking about the last 3 tournaments. Kind of a mixed bag before that. The anti-course history, I'm wanting you to go send a tweet about this potentially. I've looked at every round in my Rick Run Good database.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done this yet, by the way, but I'm willing to bet that Lee Hodges' worst tournament with his putter was last year's John Deere Classic, where he lost almost 9 strokes putting.
Wow.
I am willing to forgive. I love what I've seen from him tee to green the last 3 weeks. The putter, yes, we've it's not the only time we've seen him lose multiple strokes with the putter, but I'm willing to bet that we don't lose 8 with the putter this time around. I like Lee Hodges. I will be playing.
Well, Mike, you cash that ticket right now. 8.2 strokes putting, the worst by a pretty significant margin for Lee Hodges.
Right?
So previous to that, the 2022 Players, he lost 6.7 strokes. Prior to that, Kapalua, in 2024, he lost 5. So really, he has only lost 5 or more 3 times in his career. Last year at the John Deere, 8.2. So not only the worst, but by like a pretty big outlier, if you want to look at it that way.
Well, I'm in on him.
Well done. The $6,000 range. This is where before we get to this, Sia, if you're starting at Michael Thorbjornsen, you definitely don't need to get to the 6K range. However, if you are going to be what I assume is the majority and play one of the big 3, and then maybe Denny or then maybe Michael Thorbjornsen, you are going to have to get down here, right?
Yeah, and maybe. I mean, I think the low 7K range, some of the names we just talked about are going to be really popular. And for the record, I may start a lineup with Thorbjornsen, but I also may start with higher than Thorbjornsen. I just think that there's not a huge difference outside of Ben Griffin. I don't think there's a huge difference between guys like Michael Thorbjornsen and pretty much everybody else near the 9 and 10K range. There's not a lot of names here I love. Jackson Koiven was mentioned yesterday by, it was Jason Sobel. In terms of just an upside play. I think Lanto Griffin is interesting. The Will Gordon story, everybody's pretty familiar with, and maybe he continues his comeback in terms of just like playing decent golf. Aaron Wise actually had a decent tournament last week. I'm kind of reaching there with him, but if he can kind of continue to return to the form we saw from him like 4 or 5 years ago, I think he's interesting. But I got to be honest, I really, really don't like this range. I see Zach Johnson starred there. I actually don't mind that. I heard people mention Carl Phillips. What was that from last week?
The star is not an endorsement. The star is most times it is, but sometimes I just need to remember to go back and check something or whatever. So do not take the star as an endorsement. Though Zach Johnson won here a couple of times, but I can't remember why I had him favored. Yeah, probably from last week.
Well, since I don't have a ton to say from a 6K standpoint, I will just mention some of those other low 7K guys. I do kind of like Lee Hodges. I played him last week. We cashed a top 40 ticket on him at plus money. But Rico Hoey, I think I would probably be willing to go back to him, speaking to Team No Putt. And Sammy Balamaki, interesting. I know the chat liked him. And Eric Cole, also interesting to me. But yeah, this 6K range I'm largely avoiding.
Just to zoom out perspective wise here, I mean, the top of the 6K range includes Garrett Cago, Hayden Springer, Chad Ramey. Chad Ramey, what did he end up finishing last week? Because I know he was, T26. He has one top 30 in 3 years on his own golf ball. He has basically kept any semblance of status via the Zurich Classic, which is just insane. And he's $6,900. The middle of the range, that'll get you Ben Coles, Ben Martin, Danny Willett, David Skins. Nice opening round last week. Not much after that. And then the bottom of the range are guys that, if you've been doing this for a while, you might forget. Kyle Stanley's in this field. Remember Kyle Stanley?
What?
Kyle Stanley's in this field.
Team No Putt indeed.
Brandon Matthews is in this field. Ryan Palmer, Kevin Kisner, who's a professional analyst, is in this field. So, Mike, can I get you anything here?
Honestly, I'm not going to be in this range, and mostly because I'm playing Grillo and Hodges, and there's kind of really no need to dip down there. Now, Steven Fisk shows up and rates okay for me at 6,900. Wouldn't hate putting that in a lineup.
Let me pull up. So Seats says, hey, when you get to the 6K range, can you examine Paul Peterson's recent form? I have not scrolled down yet. I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't think it's going to be particularly pretty, but we'll look at it together. Okay. Finished T60 at the Rocket Classic, T52 at the Canadian Open, missed the cut at the Byron Nelson and Myrtle Beach, Zurich Classic, T28, and then it was 4 straight missed cuts prior to that. So not much to be particularly inspired about from Paul Peterson.
While you're looking at that, can you take a look at Chesson Hadley at 6,300? Because he has some decent course history here, and he had a recent decent finish. I'm just curious if there's an outlier there with Chesson.
The recent decent. Okay, so we've got T20 at Myrtle Beach, and then 2 missed cuts on the Corn Ferry before. That was last week, the Memorial Health Championship, where he finished T11. So that is his best result. His most recent result is his best result in quite some time. I would say, as I continue to scroll here, since May of last year.
Wow. Okay. Somebody mentioned Harry Higgs as well. I didn't realize he was in the 6K range, but that makes sense. I mean, he played well last week. Yeah.
The big rig. Let's see what he did last week. Yeah, T24. Yeah, this is a nice little profile. Missed the cut in Canada, but had made 3 straight cuts prior to that, including a T2 at Myrtle Beach. He went through that slump really to start 2025. So playing a little bit better now. The only other one that I thought was Chris Ventura, who's here. This is just pure talent. I just like Chris Ventura's talent. His tee to green numbers over the last 3-ish have been pretty good. He missed the cut in Canada, but actually gained strokes that week. And then it was 16th at Charles Schwab and 34th at the Rocket. So yeah, that's really as low as I would like to go. And he's $6,800.
Yeah, I want to comment on Higgs quickly. Again, that's kind of the exact example I meant on just favoring current form versus course history here. And I say current form, it's just one event, right? But it's one event that was similar in the nature to what they're playing here, and just absolute birdie fest. Seeing, it's an analogy, but like seeing some of those putts go in, seeing some of that good result, playing so quickly again, I think that you could do worse in the 6 range than Harry Higgs.
I tend to agree with you. Anything else? Doesn't have to be the 6K range. Doesn't have to be a player in particular, but anything else for this week's John Deere Classic before I shut us down?
I'd say to some degree, outside of a couple players that you might like a Ben Griffin, for example. I don't want to say ignore pricing because I think that sounds weird, but I do think, in this between the 7K, 8K, and 9K range, there's a lot of guys with upside. So if you're being different by having just different roster construction, or you're fading very popular players, those are good ways to be different. Maybe leaving salary on the table. I just think this is the type of tournament where you can really fade the chalk, fade the common constructions, and have a really good DFS week.
Do you know how much the optimal lineup last week cost? I have it right here.
Can I guess it's a low number? Is that why you're asking like that?
Well, I'm not asking because it's $50,000 exactly.
I'll say 47,200.
Okay, I'm going to go 44.8.
Okay. Wait, what would you say, Sia?
44.8.
Okay, that's pretty close, I think. I have it right here. It is I'm vamping. Okay, here we go. $44,400. The most expensive golfer was Max Grazerman. He was $9,100. Aldrich, $7,000. Chris Kirk, $7,500. Michael Thorbjornsen, $72,000. Nico Echeverria, $72,000. Jackson Stuber, $64,000. The best possible lineup you could have created, $44,400.
We didn't mention in Birdie Maker Nico Echeverria. Are any of you on him?
I So the thing that he does well that I like, and it's obviously volatile, but he's an approach and putting guy. And that is like, he's either going to make them all or he's not going to make any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good like DFS oriented upside play. 7,800. And again, that's a range where not a lot of people are going to dip into. Like, yeah, they might take a guy, but if your roster construction has two guys in that range, I think that automatically makes you different. The way people are going to spend up on the Denny's and the Ben Griffins and whatnot.
He also did something to his swing, which is I hate the way it looks now, but it is actually much more effective. But it is actually hard to watch. It's very ugly right now, but he's getting the job done, which is all good for him. Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay. We are done here, but the early wedge is far from done. Best bet 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday will be the next edition. And of course, just continue to rock and roll for the rest of the week. But guess what? Before you know it, couple days, Scottish Open. After that, Open Championship. So get on the proper sleep schedule. Get your coffee ready. We're going to need to figure this out. Big thanks to producer Josh, does all the hard work behind the scenes. Mike McClure, see you, Nejad. I'm Rick Gehman. This has been the Early Wedge. We'll catch you next time.